The massive screen on the bridge of HS Defiance showed thousands of enemy ships approaching Earth. Captain James Walker stood with his hands behind his back, his gray eyes fixed on the incoming threat. The enemy ships looked like dark clouds against the starlit background, their metal hulls reflecting the distant sunlight. "Status report," Walker said, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "Enemy fleet will reach Earth's orbit in 2 hours, Captain," Lieutenant Tom Parker replied from his station. The young officer's fingers moved quickly across his control panel, bringing up more detailed scans. "We count over 3,000 collective warships." Walker nodded slowly. The Defiant was humanity's newest and most powerful ship, but it was still just one vessel against thousands. The rest of Earth's fleet had been destroyed in earlier battles, leaving them as the last line of defense. "Dr. Miller, how are the ship's systems performing?" Walker asked, turning to look at his chief science officer. Miller looked up from her station, her red hair tied back in a neat bun. "All systems are running at peak efficiency, Captain. The new shields are holding steady, and the quantum core is stable." She paused before adding, "But we've never tested them in actual combat." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what was at stake. The Collective, an alliance of advanced alien species, had declared humanity too dangerous to exist. They feared how quickly humans developed new technology and how unpredictable human tactics could be. Admiral Ross entered the bridge, his weathered face showing signs of fatigue from endless planning sessions. "Captain, we've received the final evacuation reports. 90% of Earth's population is now in the underground shelters. The rest are either in bunkers or refuse to leave their homes." Walker walked to the center of the bridge, looking at each of his crew members. These were the best Earth had to offer, brave men and women who had trained for years for this moment. The Defiant itself was a marvel of engineering, combining stolen alien technology with human innovations in ways the Collective never imagined possible. "The Collective thinks they know everything about us," Walker spoke, his voice carrying across the silent bridge. "They think we're predictable because they've studied our history. They believe they can calculate every move we'll make." A small smile appeared on his face. "They're wrong." He turned to his weapons officer. "Charge all weapon systems. Ready the new plasma cannons." "Aye, Captain." "Weapons charging," the officer responded, his hands moving across the controls. The enemy ships were getting closer. Their formation was perfect, too perfect. Walker had studied their tactics. The Collective relied heavily on computer-controlled movements and pre-programmed battle strategies. They saw war as a math problem to be solved. "Dr. Miller, start powering up the quantum core," Walker ordered. "Lieutenant Parker, open a channel to the enemy fleet." The main screen flickered, showing the alien commander's face. The being had gray skin and large black eyes typical of the Collective's leadership race. "This is your final warning." The alien spoke in perfect English. "Surrender your vessel and accept your species' extinction with dignity." Walker stepped forward. "This is Captain James Walker of the HSS Defiant. We have a different proposal." He paused, letting tension build. "You turn your fleet around and leave Earth space, or we'll show you why picking a fight with humans was your biggest mistake." The alien commander laughed, a strange, echoing sound. "Your bravery is noted, Captain, but one ship cannot stand against our armada." "Watch us," Walker replied, and cut the transmission. He turned to his crew. "Battle stations, everyone. Let's show them what one human ship can do." The Defiant's engines hummed louder as power flowed through its systems. On the screen, the enemy fleet spread out, preparing to surround them. But Walker wasn't worried. The Defiant had secrets the Collective couldn't imagine, and humanity had something they would never understand: the absolute refusal to give up. "Helm, take us straight into their formation," Walker commanded. "Let's remind the galaxy why you should never corner a human." The mighty battleship moved forward, its hull gleaming in the starlight. Behind it, Earth shone like a blue jewel. everything they were fighting to protect. The fate of humanity rested on what would happen in the next few hours, and Captain Walker intended to make every second count. The last stand was about to begin. The collective fleet opened fire first. Thousands of energy beams cut through space, all aimed at the single human battleship. On the Defiance bridge, Captain Walker watched calmly as the attacks approached. "Now, Dr. Miller," he ordered. Dr. Miller's fingers flew across her control panel. Activating quantum fold drive in 3, 2, 1. The massive battleship disappeared just as the enemy weapons reached its position. The collective's energy beams passed through empty space, missing their target completely. On their command ships, alien leaders stared in confusion at their screens. The Defiant reappeared behind the enemy fleet. "Fire all weapons," Walker commanded. The ship's new plasma cannons roared to life, sending bright blue streams of energy into the unprepared enemy ships. 3 collective cruisers exploded before they could turn around. "Quantum fold drive ready for another jump, Captain," Dr. Miller reported, her eyes fixed on the power readings. The drive was humanity's greatest secret, a device that could move the ship instantly to any point in space without using the fixed jump points that all alien ships relied on. "Enemy fleet is trying to reorganize," Lieutenant Parker announced. "They're sending out orders to form a defensive sphere." Walker smiled. The collective always used the same tactics, perfectly logical moves that any military computer would recommend. But humans had learned long ago that perfect logic wasn't always the answer. "Jump points detected," Admiral Ross said from his station. "They're calling for reinforcements." "Perfect." Walker stood up from his chair. "That's exactly what we want." "Lieutenant Parker, target their supply ships." "Dr. Miller, prepare for continuous jumps. Let's show them what this ship can really do." The Defiant blinked in and out of existence, appearing at different points around the enemy fleet. Each time it appeared, its weapons struck vital targets: fuel tanks, ammunition storage, communication arrays. The collective ships tried to respond, but they were too slow, too predictable. "Sir," Parker called out, "I'm picking up chaos in their communications. Some of their ships are firing at each other." The crew watched as confusion spread through the enemy fleet. The collective had never faced an enemy that could move like this. Their carefully planned formations fell apart as ships crashed into each other trying to track the Defiance movements. "Captain," Dr. Miller spoke up, "I'm noticing something interesting in their response times. There's a pattern. They can't react faster than their central command can update their battle computers." Walker nodded. "They rely too much on their technology. They've forgotten how to think for themselves." He turned to Admiral Ross. "Time to implement the second part of our plan." "Yes," Ross agreed. "Their supply lines are exposed. If we hit their fuel carriers now, half their fleet will be stranded." The Defiant jumped again, this time appearing directly above the enemy's massive fuel transport ships. These vessels were crucial. Without them, the collective's warships would have no way to return to their home bases. "All weapons, fire on my mark," Walker ordered. He waited as the enemy ships scrambled to protect their supplies. "Fire." The Defiance weapons blazed, striking the fuel ships with surgical precision. The explosions lit up space like new stars being born. Hundreds of enemy ships suddenly found themselves with critically low fuel levels. "Sir, we're receiving signals from some of the smaller ships in their fleet," Parker reported, surprise in his voice. They're asking to surrender." Walker exchanged looks with Admiral Ross. They had expected this. The collective forced many species to join them through fear and intimidation. Seeing their supposedly invincible leaders humbled by a single human ship was changing things. "Accept their surrender," Walker ordered, "and prepare another jump. We're not done teaching the collective a lesson." As the Defiant prepared for its next attack, the crew felt a new sense of hope. They weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for every species that had been bullied and controlled by the collective. Dr. Miller looked up from her station. Quantum full drive is ready, Captain. Where to next? Walker looked at the tactical display, where thousands of dots showed the positions of enemy ships. Many were now flashing red, indicating critical damage or low fuel. The mighty collective fleet was in chaos, all because of one human ship that refused to follow their rules. Everywhere, he answered with a smile. Let's remind the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to do the unexpected. The Defiant disappeared again, leaving the collective's leaders to face an uncomfortable truth. They had severely underestimated human ingenuity. Admiral Ross stood in the Defiance communication room, watching dozens of intercepted messages scroll across the screens. Dr. Miller had modified their systems to decode the collective's secret transmissions, and what they found was changing everything. Captain Walker needs to see this, Ross said, his eyes fixed on one particular message. Get him down here immediately. Minutes later, Walker entered the room. He could tell by Ross's expression that something big had happened. What did you find? The truth about the collective, Ross replied, bringing up several messages on the main screen. They're not the United Alliance they pretend to be. Look at these communications from the Blue Star systems. The messages showed desperate pleas from alien leaders to their people. Their words revealed years of oppression under the collective's rule. Ships were forced to fight. Crews were threatened with the destruction of their homeworlds if they refused orders. Dr. Miller, Walker called through the ship's comm system. Can you confirm these messages are real? Already verified, Captain. Her voice came back. The encryption patterns match known collective protocols. These are genuine distress signals and private communications. Lieutenant Parker rushed into the room. Sir, you need to hear this. He played a new transmission they had just intercepted. The voice belonged to a ship captain from one of the smaller species in the collective. Our people never wanted this war, the alien captain's message said. The collective threatened to destroy our colonies if we didn't join their fleet. But now we've seen that they can be defeated. The human ship has shown us hope. Walker looked at Ross. How many species are being forced to fight against us? At least 7 major civilizations, Ross answered, bringing up more data. The collective conquered them one by one, always using the same method. They threatened the smaller worlds with complete destruction, forcing them to join and fight for the collective. Just like bullies, Walker said quietly. They pick on those weaker than themselves. He turned to Parker. Can we broadcast a message to all ships in the collective fleet? Yes, sir. Dr. Miller found a way to bypass their communication blocks. Walker nodded. Get her up here. It's time to show everyone in the galaxy the true face of the collective. 20 minutes later, they were ready. Dr. Miller had set up a system to broadcast their message on all frequencies, in all languages used by the collective's member species. She gave Walker a thumbs up. To all ships and worlds under collective control, Walker began, his voice firm and clear. We are the crew of the HSS Defiant. You've seen what one human ship can do against the collective's fleet, but we're not fighting just for ourselves. He paused, letting his words sink in. We've seen your messages. We know the truth about how the collective forced you to join them. They threatened your worlds, your families, your very existence. They've made you fight their wars. But today, that changes. Ross stepped forward, adding his voice to the broadcast. We offer you a choice. The Defiant has proven that the collective is not invincible. Stand with us, and together we can end their reign of terror. You don't have to be slaves to their will anymore. Across the enemy fleet, ships began powering down their weapons. On the Defiant's screens, hundreds of new signals appeared as vessel after vessel broke radio silence to respond. Captain, Parker called out, excitement in his voice. Ships are changing course. 3. No, 5 entire battle groups are pulling away from the collective formation. The bridge crew watched in amazement as more ships began breaking away. The neat, ordered lines of the collective fleet dissolved into chaos as vessels from oppressed worlds turned against their masters. Receiving transmission from the Blue Star Fleet, Parker announced. "They're declaring independence from the collective. More declarations coming in now. The Rain Worlds, the Cloud Peoples, the Dawn Systems." Walker smiled. The Defiant hadn't just proved humanity's strength. It had given hope to everyone who suffered under the collective's rule. Their one ship had created cracks in an empire. "Sir," Dr. Miller reported, "the main collective ships are powering up their weapons. They're targeting the rebelling vessels." "Not today," Walker said firmly. "Signal all freed ships to form up behind us. The Defiant will show them how humans protect their allies." The mighty battleship moved forward, its weapons charging. The real battle was just beginning, but now they weren't fighting alone. The galaxy was about to learn another human trait: the unstoppable power of fighting for freedom. High Marshal Stone's voice boomed across all communication channels. "This is your final warning, Defiant. No ship has ever escaped my pursuit. Your little rebellion ends today." On the Defiance bridge, Captain Walker studied the image of Stone's massive flagship emerging from hyperspace. The vessel was 3 times larger than the Defiant, its black hull covered in weapons. "He's got quite a reputation," Admiral Ross said quietly. 30 years of hunting down rebels. Never failed a mission." Walker smiled. "There's a first time for everything." Lieutenant Parker set course for the asteroid belt. "Dr. Miller, prepare the quantum fold drive." The Defiant turned and accelerated toward Earth's asteroid belt, a chaotic field of spinning rocks and ice chunks. Behind them, Stone's flagship and its escort ships followed, their engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. "They're gaining on us," Parker reported. 5 smaller ships moving to cut off our escape routes." "Perfect," Walker replied. "They're doing exactly what I expected. Stone thinks we're running scared." He turned to Dr. Miller. "How's our new stealth system working?" "Ready for testing, Captain. The asteroid's natural radiation should help mask our signature." The Defiant plunged into the asteroid belt. Massive rocks tumbled around them, some as big as mountains. Most ships would never dare fly at full speed here, but the Defiant's crew had trained for this. "Enemy ships are spreading out," Ross reported. "They're trying to box us in against the larger asteroids." Walker nodded. "They still think in straight lines and perfect formations. Let's show them how humans navigate." He looked at his helm officer. "Take us in deeper. Full speed." The Defiant weaved between the asteroids, its advanced systems allowing it to predict the rock's movements. Behind them, Stone's ships followed more cautiously, their larger size making it harder to maneuver. "They're shooting at the asteroids," Parker called out, "trying to clear a path." "That's their mistake," Walker said. He watched as the enemy ship's weapons broke apart several large asteroids, creating clouds of smaller, faster-moving debris. "Now, Dr. Miller, activate the stealth system and prepare to jump." The Defiant's hull changed color, matching the dark rocks around it. At the same moment, hundreds of small devices launched from the ship's rear, each one broadcasting a copy of the Defiant's signal. "Quantum fold drive ready," Miller reported. Walker waited until Stone's ships were deep in the debris field, their sensors confused by the multiple signals. "Jump us behind his flagship, right in its blind spot." The Defiant vanished and reappeared directly behind Stone's massive vessel. The enemy ship's rear shields were weakened from deflecting asteroid debris, exactly as Walker had planned. "All weapons, target their engine cores," Walker ordered. "Fire." The Defiant's guns roared to life, sending streams of plasma into the flagship's vulnerable engines. Stone's ship shuddered as explosions ripped through its rear section. "Their escort ships are trying to turn around," Ross reported. "But the asteroids are in their way. They're hitting their own debris field." Walker watched as Stone's perfect formation fell apart. 2 escort ships collided while trying to avoid a cluster of rocks. Another spun out of control after a direct hit from a massive asteroid. "Sir," Parker called out, "we're receiving a transmission from inside Stone's ship. It's their crew. They're rebelling." On the main screen, They could see escape pods launching from the flagship. Many of Stone's own crew, inspired by the Defiance earlier broadcast, were abandoning their commander. "Stone's ship is trying to power up its jump drive," Miller reported. "But their engines are too damaged." "Open a channel," Walker ordered. When Stone's angry face appeared on the screen, Walker spoke calmly. "Looks like someone finally escaped your pursuit, Marshal. And we did it in an asteroid field you thought would trap us." Stone's gray face showed rage and disbelief. "Impossible. Our calculations, our superior technology." "That's your problem," Walker replied. "You rely too much on calculations, humans. We improvise." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their command bridge. Let's end this." The Defiant's final shot struck true. Stone's mighty flagship, pride of the collective fleet, went dark. As rescue ships moved in to pick up the surrendering crews, Admiral Ross turned to Walker. "You knew they'd follow us in here. You planned this from the start." Walker nodded. "Sometimes the best trap is one that looks like a retreat." The collective never understood that about humans. We're our most dangerous when they think they have us cornered. The Defiant moved through the asteroid field, now accompanied by ships that had once hunted it. The hunter had become the hunted, and the galaxy had learned another lesson about underestimating humanity. Lieutenant Parker couldn't believe what he was seeing on his communication screens. After the Defiant had defeated High Marshal Stone, something incredible started happening across the galaxy. Every hour, more worlds were rising up against the collective. "Captain, you need to see this," Parker called out, bringing up dozens of video feeds on the main screen. "It's spreading faster than we expected." Captain Walker and Admiral Ross watched as images poured in from different star systems. On one world, thousands of alien citizens were tearing down collective monuments. On another, factory workers had taken control of shipyards, stopping the production of war vessels. "Dr. Miller," Walker called over the ship's comm. "How's the data decryption coming?" "Finished, Captain," she replied. "You won't believe what we found in Stone's computer banks. Detailed records of every crime the collective committed. Lists of worlds they threatened, populations they enslaved. They kept records of everything." Walker nodded. They never thought anyone would defeat them. Their pride made them sloppy. He turned to Parker. "Broadcast everything. Let every world see the truth." The young lieutenant's fingers flew across his control panel. The Defiant began transmitting the stolen files across all frequencies. The truth about the collective's crimes spread like wildfire through the galaxy. "Sir," Parker said, excitement in his voice, "resistance leaders from 12 different systems are requesting to speak with us. They want to coordinate their attacks." The main screen split into multiple sections, showing faces of various alien species. Some looked almost human, others were completely different, but they all shared the same look of determination. "The Defiant's victory showed us it could be done," one resistance leader said. "Now we need your help to finish this." Walker looked at Admiral Ross, who nodded. "The collective's leaders are already trying to regain control," Ross said. "They're sending ships to punish rebelling worlds. We need to move fast." "Then let's give them a real revolution," Walker replied. He addressed the resistance leaders. "The Defiant will help coordinate your attacks. Lieutenant Parker will work with each of your groups. We'll show you how humans plan an uprising." Over the next few hours, Parker shared everything he knew about guerrilla warfare tactics. The resistance leaders learned about hit-and-run attacks, about disrupting supply lines, about using smaller ships to take down larger ones. Humans had centuries of experience fighting against stronger enemies, and now they shared that knowledge. "Look at this," Dr. Miller called out, bringing up a new tactical display. Red dots showing collective loyalist ships were being overwhelmed by swarms of smaller green dots, rebel vessels using human tactics. "They're succeeding because they're working together," Ross observed. "The collective kept these species divided, afraid of each other. Now they're united." Suddenly, new alarms started blaring. Parker's eyes widened as he read the incoming data. Captain, the collective's leadership is making an announcement. They're threatening to destroy entire planets if the rebellion doesn't stop. Walker's face hardened. Put them on screen. The image showed the collective's supreme leader, his gray face twisted with rage. This chaos must end. We will begin destroying rebel worlds in 1 hour. Starting with... Walker cut off the transmission. Send this message to every rebel ship and world, he ordered Parker. The collective just made their last mistake. They showed us they're desperate. He smiled. And desperate enemies make bad decisions. The bridge crew watched as their message went out. Across the galaxy, billions of beings heard Walker's words. The collective thinks fear will save them. But they don't understand what happens when you push people too far. Today, we show them that threats only make us stronger. Today, every world they threatened becomes their enemy. New signals lit up Parker's console as ships began gathering. Not just dozens or hundreds, but thousands, ships of every size and type, crewed by beings from hundreds of worlds. All of them had one goal: to end the collective's reign of terror. "Sir," Parker reported, his voice full of awe, "the rebel fleet is forming up. They're asking for the Defiant to lead them." Walker looked at the tactical display, where countless allied ships waited for his orders. The Defiant had started this revolution by showing the galaxy that the collective could be beaten. Now it would help finish what it started. "Send word to all ships," Walker commanded. "We're taking the fight to the collective's home systems. It's time to end this, not just for humanity, but for every species that wants to be free." The revolution wasn't just sparked anymore. It had become an unstoppable fire, and the collective was about to learn what happened when they pushed the entire galaxy too far. The space around the collective's home system was filled with ships. On one side, the remaining loyal forces of the collective had gathered for their last stand. 5,000 warships protecting their capital world. On the other side, the combined rebel fleet waited, led by the now legendary HSS Defiant. They'd fortified their defense line perfectly, Admiral Ross said, studying the tactical display. Multiple layers, overlapping fields of fire, all their best ships and crews. Captain Walker stood at the center of Defiance Bridge, watching the enemy formation. Too perfect, too predictable. He turned to Dr. Miller. "Is the quantum fold drive ready for what we discussed?" "Yes, Captain," she replied. "But we've never attempted a jump with this many ships before. The calculations alone..." She paused, checking her screens. "If we're off by even a tiny amount, we could lose half the fleet." Walker looked around at his crew. They had come so far, from defending Earth alone to leading the largest rebel fleet the galaxy had ever seen. "Send the signal to all ships. Time to show the collective one last human trick." Lieutenant Parker began broadcasting instructions to the rebel fleet. Every ship moved into position, forming a massive sphere around the Defiant. The enemy watched, puzzled by this strange formation. "The collective's leader is hailing us," Parker reported. "Put him on screen," Walker ordered. The Supreme Leader's gray face appeared, his black eyes showing both anger and fear. "Your rebellion ends here. You've brought these ships to their destruction." "No," Walker replied calmly. "We've brought them to witness your surrender." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships, link your computers to the Defiant. Dr. Miller, start the countdown." The quantum fold drive began powering up, its energy now connected to every rebel ship through special devices they had built. The collective fleet watched, still not understanding what was about to happen. "Enemy ships are charging weapons," Ross reported. "They're preparing to fire." 10 seconds to jump," Miller called out. All ships synchronized. The collective fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams shot toward the rebel ships. 5 seconds. Walker gripped his chair. "Hold steady. Jump. Now." In an instant, the entire rebel fleet vanished, leaving the collective's attacks to pass through empty space. Before the enemy could react, the rebels reappeared, inside their formation. "We're behind our shields," Parker shouted. "Their defense line is broken." "All ships, open fire," Walker commanded. The battle exploded into chaos. The rebel ships, appearing in the middle of the enemy fleet, began firing at point-blank range. The collective's perfect formation became their worst enemy, as ships couldn't fire without hitting their own vessels. "Their flagship is trying to escape," Ross called out. "They didn't expect us to get this close." Walker watched as the massive enemy flagship turned to flee. Not this time. Defiant set course for their command ship. "All weapons, prepare to fire." The human battleship charged forward, its guns blazing. Around them, rebel ships were winning their individual battles, using the close combat tactics humanity had taught them. "Their shields are down," Miller reported as the Defiant closed in on the flagship. Walker stood up. "Send this message to their leader. Surrender now, or we'll destroy your ship." Seconds passed. The flagship's engines powered down. On the tactical display, other collective ships began following their leader's example, powering down their weapons. "Sir," Parker said, his voice full of emotion, "they're surrendering. All of them. The collective. It's over." The bridge crew cheered as ship after ship gave up the fight. The rebel fleet had won, led by human courage and ingenuity. Admiral Ross walked to Walker's side. "Using the quantum fold drive to jump our entire fleet inside their formation. No one's ever tried anything like that before." Walker smiled. "That's why it worked. The collective thinks war is about following rules and patterns. Humans know sometimes you have to try the impossible." As the rebel ships moved to secure their victory, Walker looked at his crew, the people who had started this journey defending Earth and ended it freeing the galaxy. "Send word to all ships," he ordered. "The collective's reign is over. Today, every world is free." The message spread across space, reaching every planet and ship. The final battle had ended not just in victory, but in a complete change of power. And it had happened because one human ship dared to stand against impossible odds. The galaxy would never be the same again. 1 month after the final battle, the HSS Defiant orbited Earth, its hull bearing the marks of countless battles. Below, in the grand meeting hall of the newly built Galactic Unity Center, representatives from over 300 worlds gathered to shape the future. Captain Walker stood at the main window of the Defiance observation deck, watching ships from different species coming and going from Earth. Admiral Ross joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Hard to believe it's only been a month," Ross said, handing Walker a cup. "Look at them all down there, working together like they've been allies for years." Walker nodded. Earth had become the center of a new galactic alliance, but not through force like the collective had used. Instead, it was built on mutual respect and shared dreams of freedom. "Captain," Lieutenant Parker's voice came over the comm. "They're ready for the ceremony. Dr. Miller says the broadcast systems are set to reach every world in known space." The 2 officers made their way to the shuttle bay. As they flew down to Earth, they could see the changes the planet had undergone. New buildings with alien architecture stood next to human structures. Ships of all designs filled the skies. Earth had truly become the heart of the galaxy. Inside the Unity Center, thousands of beings stood as Walker and his crew entered. The Defiance team walked past rows of representatives. Some looked human, others were completely alien, but all showed deep respect for the crew that had changed everything. The new council leader, elected by all free worlds, stepped forward to speak. She was from one of the first worlds that had rebelled against the collective. "1 month ago, we lived in fear," she began, her voice translated into hundreds of languages. "The collective told us they were superior, that their way was the only way. Then a single human ship showed us the truth." She gestured to the Defiance crew. "These humans taught us that true strength isn't about having the most advanced technology or the biggest fleet. It's about courage, creativity, and the willingness to stand up for what's right." Dr. Miller wiped a tear from her eye as the council leader continued. Next to her, Parker stood tall, thinking of all the resistance fighters he had helped coordinate. The collective's leaders have been tried for their crimes, the council leader announced. Their empire of fear is gone forever. In its place, we build something new. An alliance where every world has a voice, where we learn from each other instead of controlling each other. She turned to Walker. Captain, your ship and crew will go down in history. The HSS Defiant will be remembered as the spark that lit the fire of freedom. But more than that, humanity has shown us a new way forward. Walker stepped up to speak. He looked out at the gathered representatives, remembering all the battles, all the sacrifices that had brought them to this moment. The Defiant didn't win this victory alone, he said. Every world that stood up against tyranny, every being that chose freedom over fear, you are all heroes. Humans don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it, learn from it, and help build a future where no species ever has to live in fear again. The hall erupted in cheers. On screens across the galaxy, billions watched as the new alliance became official. The collective's old territories were freed. Trade routes were open to all, and knowledge was shared freely between worlds. Later that day, as the celebrations continued, the Defiance crew gathered on their bridge one last time. The ship was being transformed into a museum, a symbol of hope for future generations. Look at this, Parker said, showing them his datapad. Ships from 20 different worlds are working together to build a new defense fleet. They're all sharing ideas, combining their technologies with human innovation. And the quantum fold drive? Ross asked. Being shared with all member worlds, Dr. Miller replied proudly. But they're keeping the human modifications. Turns out our primitive way of thinking brought some unique improvements. Walker touched the ship's wall gently. The Defiant had started as humanity's last hope and ended up becoming the galaxy's salvation. But the real victory wasn't in defeating the collective. It was in showing that different species could work together, learn from each other, and build something better than any empire. Ready to head down? Ross asked. They're waiting to start the Unity Day celebrations. Walker took one last look around the bridge. Yes, he said with a smile. It's a new dawn for all of us, and this is just the beginning. The galaxy had changed forever, and it all started because one human ship dared to fight back. The HSS Defiant had forced the galaxy to its knees, not to conquer it, but to help it stand up again, stronger, freer, and united.